Welcome back. I am Rudy Knapp, and this is Legacy Building Your Kingdom. It's been a little while. It's been over a month, and I'm back. Uh, took a little break, and a lot of things going on in the month of August, and then some technical difficulties with my equipment here. So it took me a little while. A week or so ago, recorded two sessions, two little clips here for you guys, and guess what? All staticky, couldn't publish them. So I am back. I'm trying to fix this, trying to work this out. So hopefully we're good to go today. We left off talking about parenting and we had some conversations, some tough ones. And we talked a little bit about this idea of social norms and how, hey, we make decisions that are away from our core values sometimes because of social norms. So we have to make sure as parents we are better sticking to our thoughts, our process, what we believe in, our core values, over letting the social norms dictate some of the things that we do for our children. We went through a whole lot with that. We also talked about bringing God into our child's life, and that was the kickoff to our parenting. So we're still going to continue on, but I want to do a little sunshine, a little ray of hope for everyone out there coming back to the school year. I hope that everyone is back in the swing of things. I hope that parents are happy that kids are back at school. I hope teachers are finally settled down with the nerves of starting a new school year, and teachers, and I should say students, because a lot of times, you know, students walk into that door and they don't know what to expect, and they don't know, you know, the hope and the dreams of the school year are to get better, to be smart, and to actually learn during the school year. But, in all actuality, are we actually learning? Like, what's going on in the classroom? And those things are answered usually by the end of the school year. So just a big start to this is to say, hey, welcome back to the school year. Hopefully students are excited and they're back in the classroom and they like their teachers and we're ready to roll. I know my two are walking into high school and there were some nerves involved. Going into high school, it's a different environment, but they both seem to really like it. They both seem to love it. And, you know, my son playing sports and my daughter involved in some activities, hopefully soon. But getting involved into the high school and actually having school spirit, and I love that idea. Brings us together, collaboration. Kids are friends with a lot of other kids. So, it gets us right back into the swing of things. And I just want to start this off with a kind of a positive note. But before that, I want to just say real quick, when we talk about the parenting aspect of the kids in school, it's really our responsibility as a parent to make education important to them, to value education. We have so many times that we come across people that just don't value education, and you hear all the negative things. But I think anyone that's really honest with themselves can go back and start having this conversation about, you know, what is the value of education? What is the value of knowledge? What is the value of us knowing things? And so if you really convince yourself that, oh, I didn't learn anything in school, school, we don't need school. And, I hear the same argument where a lot of people are, really against this concept of promoting college versus going to some sort of trade. Totally agree with it. I think that the trades are really important. We need the trades out there and they make some money. And if we can get our kids involved in the trades, that would be great. I think college is important for certain specific careers that people are going into, but the cost of college is insane. So I would never promote college for people that are not ready for college or don't know what they're going to do. I always say with my own two kids, they have till the end of junior year to figure out what they want to do with their life, because we're not playing the wish-washy game in senior year of college. I've seen that happen with friends of mine. I've seen that go back and forth. Should they go to college? Should they not go to college? Are they going to pay for college and waste it? I've had friends of mine when we went to college that wasted their degree. They didn't use their degree on what they ended up being in their career. So we really want to push ourselves to have our kids make decisions. I think that's the hardest thing in life, is to have people that actually make decisions. So pushing our children to actually do some research for a few years in high school to figure out what do they want to do. Start taking classes towards what they want to do. But they have to come up with it. And that's our job to actually introduce them. That's the school's job to actually introduce them to career opportunities. So when we do that for these kids, they have to come up and decide, well, what kind of work is it going to take? They have to put in their due diligence to figure out, if I choose to be in some crazy profession out there, then I better know the work it's going to take for me to get there. If I choose to be, a teacher, then I have to know that I have to go to school for 4 years and get a bachelor's degree. and that I have to go into student teaching and I have to understand all the things that are involved with this career. So the concept becomes make them full of knowledge about what they possibly can be, and then let's talk about finance. Too many people don't want to talk about, well, what do they make, what can this make me, and what do I need, what skills do I need. So if we make them knowledgeable instead of letting them walk into college and say, oh well, I'll figure it out as I go. A lot of people waste money, and I'm just not a component of saying go to college to grow or to figure out for yourself. You need to know, and you need to have a track, and you need to stay on track. So that's my personal opinion. But getting on to what I want to kind of talk about today is, this hope of a new school year. We talk about wanting to learn. And I mentioned earlier, what actually does happen during a school year? What is this growth that we're looking for? And how do we measure it? There's a lot of times kids will go through school and, they'll pass because the school system is allowing us to pass. But how much are they growing? How much are they learning? This encyclopedia of knowledge that comes through your brain and this concept of, soaking up as much as you can in order for you to move on to the next grade level. I tell my kids all the time, whatever you soak up, whatever you keep in your brain, this encyclopedia that you're building in your head, that right there, that's going to be there for you. A lot of people will argue, I don't use algebra and I don't use it and I'm never going to use algebra and I'm never going to use certain things that I learned. It's there for you in case you use it. And honestly, algebra you do use. Every single day, you've used it since kindergarten. You use a form of algebra every day. And there's so many people that will argue that. And so many people have no clue that they use things like algebra when they problem solve. You were a kindergartner one time. I think I've mentioned this before. I have this many apples. I have 5 more apples. How many apples do I have now? Or what is the missing amount of apples I have now? Those kind of things. I have this many apples. I have 5 more apples. I now have 10 apples. How many apples am I missing? Those are algebraic concepts. We have to get into this idea that what we're teaching our kids is there for a reason. They build on concepts. They build on patterns to make connections to other things that are going on in the world. Now, yes, there are going to be things that they learn that maybe they don't use throughout their life, and we understand that. But a well rounded person in our society is what we're trying to create here. And then when they figure out what career they want to go into, hey, let's make sure that's specific enough that they're getting the resources and knowledge that they need in order to get to. So, as parents, one more time, we are the ones that provide these conversations with them, that provide the knowledge for them, or we talk to their counselors at school to help provide this information for them. I agree, the same argument. We should have our kids in financing. We should have our kids in high schools that have, yes, I believe that all along. We talk about it in my math classes from 6th grade on. But they should have an understanding of how the world works, what a credit card does, what a debit card is. I mean, my kids have debit cards now since, 8th grade, so they can understand the concept of what's happening with their money, so they can keep track of their money. We have to do that as parents for a reason, because if they have no clue and they don't understand, we're lost in this world. There are a lot of adults out there who are lost in this world when they're buying a car. Well, yeah, sure, I'll buy this car. Oh, my car payment's only $700? Yeah, it's $700 for the next 10 years. Well, guess what? If you don't understand that you're paying for 10 years, or if you don't understand the interest rate is well above what you should be paying, or if you're paying an interest rate that's out of this world, then you don't understand a lot that has to do with finance. So we have to get into this concept of making sure our kids are knowledgeable. Now, this school year, we walk in and as a teacher and as students and as parents, we're excited, we're nervous, we don't know what to expect. We got people that are too involved, we have people not involved enough. There's a lot that goes on in the school year, and there's a lot that happens at the beginning of the school year to set the tone. We've talked a lot about behavior before, and the behaviors in a classroom does come back to a reflection and a conversation about parenting at home. And so I'll get into that at another time. But what I want to get into is a little bit more about what happened to me a couple weeks ago. So as a teacher, we want to provide these students with opportunity, with knowledge, but we also want to provide them with this concept of, believing in themselves, the self-identity of what they can do with their life. As a teacher, we look for those moments that, students give back and then they reflect and they're appreciative, and it means the world to us as teachers, and you don't get it all the time. And depending on where you teach, you might get it more often than you don't. But the concept becomes is when that student does really look back at their their lives and how they were affected by people, a lot of times they mention a teacher. We get a bad rap sometimes, but we also get a lot of great praise at times. Most of you out there can think right now, take a second, think about that teacher that influenced you or that teacher that you hated that maybe you later on found out I should have been listening or they were teaching me, even though they were harsh and they were mean and they had structure. And, you know, give that a thought. And, you know, I'm a big component of giving back. And I know that in the past, I've given back to some of my coaches. I've written letters. I've made sure that some of my coaches were huge influences on my life, especially my Uncle Jim, this huge influence on my life. You one of my coaches in high school, Coach Brad Johnson, he was a great influence on me. Probably doesn't know it as much. I know I wrote him a letter at one point when I got out of high school, but the idea was to learn something about life. And so I learned so much through wrestling from my uncle. I learned so much through the classes and the coaching of football with Brad Johnson. There were so many other coaches out there, but those were two influential people who were also teacher. I mean, my Brad Johnson was actually a teacher as well, so I learned a lot in his classroom. But the idea was to give back. And so what happened to me this week, and I like to share this with you. Very emotional discussing this. I received a text message and it said, "Mr. Knapp." And I was like, "Yes, who is this? Do you remember me? It's Latanya. I looked you up and I wanted to ask you how you're doing. And I was wondering about your twins and how they're doing." And I knew exactly who it was. Don't have her number. Didn't know she could find my number, but really interesting to have this student reach out to me because she's one of those stories. So I thought it was really interesting that she reached out to me with the amount of effort it took for her to get my number and make sure she comes back to talk to me. And then to mention my twins. Now, let's rewind. I had this girl in class probably 13, 14 years ago. My kids were just born, they were babies. And so we would talk. And so as this text message feed continued on, this little girl, Latanya, she asked about them over and over again. And she's like, "I remember the stories you told us. I remember how the life stories that were going on. I always wonder what happened with them and how they became and who they became and what kind of people they are and what they look like." And so she was just really in tune with my twins back when I taught her. I taught her in probably sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. I think I taught her 3 years of math. So, backstory on Latanya. Latanya was a great student. When she first started, I either taught her in fifth or sixth grade, I can't remember. And then I kind of looped with her and I taught her in seventh and eighth grade. She struggled at math, and I'm a math teacher, and so I was teaching her math. And she struggled, but she was very eager to learn, but she had a little harshness to her that was direct. And I remember Latanya being in the classroom, but she would always go home and do the things good students do. So she created habits that we possessed in the classroom. And I'm very big in life on this. And I'm also very big in my classroom on you create habits. And the hardest part that we have as parents is sometimes we create bad habits at home. And so when kids come into the door in the school and they have bad habits, it's very difficult to overcome those bad habits. And we have to overcome some of those bad habits when it comes to school if they are directly related to school. Latanya, came in the door and had some bad habits, and we corrected, and along with the other students, corrected the bad habits, and we continue to correct the bad habits throughout. As we keep talking about what is a good student, I talk about it all the time in my classrooms, but a good student, what possesses a good student? You know, Students that pay attention, students that are respectful, students that do their work at home, students that bring their materials, are ready to learn, students that are paying attention, the ones that talk, collaborate, the ones that are getting in their groups and working on the things they're supposed to work on. Those people become good students. They also become successful. They may not be a straight A student, and they may not be a student that gets it right away. They have to struggle. But if they have good habits that are formed, they will grow. And as I mentioned before, what actually happens during a school year? Well, if a student starts at a low level and they grow throughout the school year, growth can measure success. But how do we measure success? Is it just getting to the next class? Is it going from fifth grade to sixth grade? Is it going from seventh grade to eighth grade? Like, what is success for you as a parent? Is it just getting your kid to the next grade level? Or what do you want to see for your child? What is success for your child? What do they see for themselves? I passed seventh grade. Is that really success, or is it actually learning something, actually having the knowledge in the classroom that you're supposed to have? Now, I'll go back to Latanya. Latanya came in and she struggled a little bit, and she struggled throughout the years I've had her, but by the time she was in 8th grade, I mean, this girl was one of my top students, and she clearly got it, and she created great habits, and she understood, and she became a good student. Now, fast forward a little bit, 4 years after that, she graduates from my school, she goes on to high school, she comes back to my classroom, she opens up a T-shirt that says Georgia State, and she says, "It's because you taught me math that I'm the valedictorian of my high school." And so, you know, that's an emotional thing for me to think that she came back to say that to me. And the idea is, this little girl that comes from, a poverty stricken area, that comes from a school that, she had to work for everything she got. She comes from a background that, she probably didn't have everything that most people have. And to get a full ride to Georgia State, to give me credit for teaching her math and making me understand that I was a huge influence on her life. It's an honor to sit back as a teacher and say, I helped that person, you know, and to give me that credit when all actuality, she put the effort in. She did the work. She created the habits, and she's successful because she wanted to be successful. And I helped her along the way with trying to implement these habits into her. Again, just a huge boost for me and my career. One of those stories I love to tell. But then she sends me this text message a few weeks ago, and she's talking to me again and again, thanking me again, finding out this concept of her being a business owner and her, getting a degree in college and her going back to college to get another degree. And she has all these high expectations and she has all these things that she's looking to do in her life. And, to know that she's 26 years old and she's sitting around and she's looking at, you know, this idea that she's doing something with her life and she's still coming back and she's still taking an effort to come back and thank me for helping her in her life. I mean, and then worrying and actually caring about my own kids. I mean, this is an idea of when we talk about give back to people. She gave back to me probably more than I ever gave to her. So when you hold this story, please understand, in life, we go through life with a couple things. Number one, we create habits, and sometimes they're bad habits or good habits. We have to focus on good habits. I talked to my workout buddies a little bit, and I'm sure they probably are sick of hearing me, but a couple things that I'll throw out there, as a life coach in my life coaching business here, I believe in habit forming. How do you create a habit? How does that happen? You can't just say, okay, this is my habit. This goes right back to my motto over and over again. You're going to sacrifice something. And a lot of time it's time. A lot of time it could be sleep, but you're going to sacrifice something to create a discipline. Whatever the discipline is you want, you're going to create that discipline with one way: consistency. So if you want to get in shape, that's a discipline. You have to go to the gym. If you want to get in shape, you're going to have to eat right. Those are disciplines. And you have to do it consistently, which means you have to do it all the time, almost every day. And then you create accountability. And so once you are accountable for yourself, you will see growth, you will see success. So when little Latanya decided to create habits like going home or taking notes in the classroom, like we've said, or going home and reading her notes and actually going on the programs that we're telling her to and actually completing her homework to the best of her ability and not just skipping through it, all the habits of being a good student, paying attention, raising her hand, participating, all of those habits that she did on a daily basis every single day, she created a discipline to be a good student. She created this consistently every single day. She wanted to learn. She held herself accountable. She could not handle getting a grade less than an A on a test. She had to go back and fix it and correct it or come in early. I used to do tutoring in the morning. I remember seeing her in the morning for tutoring, free tutoring for the students anytime they would come in. This is what she did. And this is why she's successful. And so I promote this to my buddies, my workout buddies, and they hear me say this all the time, because if you want to have the results, if you want growth, if you want success as you might measure it, you're going to make sure you form habits. And these habits have to be what you want out of life, right? how you live your life, how you conduct yourself, those are from habits that you're forming. If we create bad habits, you're going to see the opposite. So I want you guys to go back and really think about, how do I give back to people? How do I really show appreciation like little Latanya have done for me? How do I take on this school year, this sign of hope for school year? How do I create habits for my kids? Do I provide them with a place for them to do their homework? Do I check over their homework? Don't do their homework. Please don't ever do that for them. As a teacher, please don't ever do your homework for your kids. Don't sit there for hours. Don't sit there and, they are responsible for learning in class and doing their homework at home. If you have homework, only thing a parent should ever do is just check to make sure they did it. Don't ever correct it. Don't go over it. Don't sit there with them. If you see they didn't give effort, then tell them to do it again. But if it's something like they showed all their work and they got it wrong, let it be wrong. If that's the best thing a parent can do for them, don't take on doing it for them. Don't write their papers for them. Don't go home and sit with them and cry when they're crying because they have to get it done by the next day. Make them do it, but don't do it for them. But anyway, what habits are we creating? Are we telling them how important education is and how it's the key to whatever they want to become? Even if you go into their trades, guess what? You need education. You need to learn. You need to know things. You need to know math and reading. You need to know these things as you walk into a trade, or you're not going to get hired. You're not going to be in an apprenticeship. The idea is we have to set them up for success by creating good habits at home. Are they respectful? Are they paying attention? So when we talk about behavior in the classroom, that comes back to us as parents. What habits do we form for them? You're respectful to teachers. You're respectful to adults. You sit in a classroom, you sit up, you pay attention. You're not talking to your friends during the class. You're taking notes. You're writing down what you hear. You're making sure that you have your materials. You're providing your kids with materials. You're making sure they're organized. That's on you as a parent. And if you're not so much, you have to figure it out for you to model it for them. So going back to this parenting concept, let's go. Step up, create an environment for your kids to be successful in school. And for those teachers out there, they have to do the same. They have to model it in the classroom. They have to be organized. They have to show them good habits. They have to be the ones that encourage as well, just like parents. This is a well-rounded attempt to help these children to show growth, to get to the point where they need to be. So as you start the school year, all of us, I want you to really look back at this idea, and I want you to start thinking about, how can you go forward with creating these habits for your kids, but also how can you show appreciation for what you've got in your life? Share some stories with your kids. Show them how to be appreciative towards the people that are helping them. Maybe it's you that they're coming back and thanking because you're the parent that stepped up. Maybe it's their teachers. Maybe we should all be looking at others and showing appreciation. This gratitude is never ending. It's for the rest of your life. And I have to say thank you to that little Tanya, because it was definitely something that created more hope in my life for me to do this position and do this job to help those around, and even take that into my life coaching, because that's what I'm passionate about. So as we sit here and we end this today, I just want to make sure everybody understands, to have a great year. Parents, celebrate that your kids are back out of your hair for a little while, but set these habits at home. Don't forget, the number one person that they're looking towards is their parent. So I challenge you to go out and talk to them a little bit about how important education is. Talk to them on how it's the gateway to getting to where they want to be. Educate them at home. You're their first teacher and their most important teacher. You're their parent. So do your job at home and you'll see success in the classroom. And the most important thing is, check that behavior on them. Whatever systems you need to put in place, whatever habits you need to form, check it for them, because they need it. And it helps out the whole system. It helps out all the kids in the classroom. All right, I'm signing off. I'm Rudy Knapp again, and I hope that you guys have a great week. Hopefully, this is not staticky and we can get right back at this. Take care.